In 2012, Brian Olisic and 3 of his colleagues were betrayed by a co-worker who shot each of them point blank in the back of the head in an armed robbery at the University of Alberta. Sadly, Brian and 2 of his colleagues did not survive. They were murdered in cold blood. The 4th colleague did survive, but lives with life-altering injuries. Their murderer was the first to be sentenced under a common-sense law passed by the Harper Conservative government that gave judges the discretion to apply consecutive parole ineligibility periods to mass and serial murderers to take into account each life lost. Brian's parents, Mike and Diane, who I've gotten to know over the years and who are constituents of mine, told me that when the sentence was handed down, they felt some sense of relief knowing they likely would never have to face Brian's murderer at a parole hearing. That changed 2 years ago when the Supreme Court of Canada struck down that common sense law. What that means for Mike and Diane is that they may have to face Brian's murderer in a parole hearing in 13 short years from now. Someone who took the lives of 3 innocent people in cold blood and caused life-altering injuries to a 4th victim. But it gets worse. Brian's murderer, after 13 years, could be eligible to apply for parole year after year after year. Mike and Diane came to me following the decision and said, what could be done? And I told them that for Justin Trudeau's Liberals, they have the tools at their disposal to respond to this decision, and it's called the notwithstanding clause. Justin Trudeau's Liberals could have invoked the notwithstanding clause to override this unjust decision and reinstate the sentences of some of Canada's most heinous murderers. But typical of Justin Trudeau's soft-on-crime Liberals, they didn't invoke the notwithstanding clause, and they've done nothing to respond to this unjust decision of the Supreme Court of Canada. After it became clear that the Liberals were going to do nothing, Mike and Diane came back to me and asked whether there was anything that could be done to give them the assurance that they wouldn't have to face Brian's murderer at a parole hearing year after year. And so I reached out to my Conservative colleague, Senator Pierre Boivenu, and together we drafted a bill. It's called Brian's Bill. Brian's Bill, if enacted, would provide that criminals convicted of murder would have one kick at the can to apply for parole when they're eligible to do so, and if they're turned down, as they almost certainly will be, that they don't get to apply for parole year after year, re-traumatizing the families of their victims. Instead, they would only be eligible to apply again at the time of the automatic parole review, which is every 5 years. And yes, 5 years is too soon, but it is a significant improvement to the possibility of murderers like Brian's murderer applying year after year after year. So I'm asking for your help to send a message to Parliament to pass Brian's bill. Help lend your voice by signing a petition initiated by Mike and Diane urging the speedy passage of Brian's bill so that we can, for once, put the rights of victims' families ahead of the rights of murderers.